This video covers 8 UK meat pie brands that shoppers consistently regret buying once they actually taste them. Brands that look traditional on the box, promise butcher-style quality, and trade heavily on nostalgia, but fall apart the moment you cut into them. This is not about luxury pies or local bakeries. This is about widely available supermarket brands that rely on reputation, price, or packaging rather than what actually matters, which is flavor, texture, meat quality, and honesty. British meat pies are supposed to be simple comfort food. Proper pastry that holds together, meat that tastes like meat, gravy that adds richness instead of hiding flaws, and seasoning that doesn't feel like an afterthought. When any one of those things fails, the entire pie fails. When several fail at once, you end up with something that feels more like a filler product than real food. And unfortunately, that's exactly what happens with the brands on this list. The first brand you should think twice about buying is Hollands Pies. Hollands is one of the most recognizable names in the UK pie world, especially in the north of England, and for many people it carries a sense of tradition. The problem is that the product no longer lives up to that image. The most common complaint with Hollands pies is the meat content, or more accurately, the lack of it. Cut one open, and you'll often find a soft, mushy filling that leans heavily on gravy and thickening agents, rather than chunks of identifiable meat. The beef often tastes boiled rather than browned, which removes depth and leaves a flat, slightly metallic note. The pastry is another weak point, frequently described as thick but oddly fragile, cracking instead of flaking, and going soggy fast if reheated. These pies fill you up, but they do it with bulk rather than satisfaction, and that's not what a good meat pie is supposed to do. Next on the list is Fray Bentos. This is probably the most divisive pie brand in the UK, and also one of the most iconic thanks to its long shelf life and distinctive tin. The problem is that nostalgia is doing most of the work here. Once you actually eat one, especially if you haven't had one since childhood, the disappointment hits hard. The filling is extremely loose and gelatinous, with gravy that sets almost like jelly when it cools. The meat content is inconsistent, with some tins containing decent chunks and others filled mostly with shredded fragments suspended in sauce. The pastry, which sits on top rather than enclosing the filling, rarely cooks evenly and often ends up either underbaked in the center or overdone at the edges. What really pushes Fray Bentos onto this list is how far removed it feels from fresh food. It eats like a product designed for storage first and enjoyment second. Third is Pukka pies. Pukka is everywhere, from supermarkets to football stadiums, and that accessibility is part of the problem. When a pie is designed to be mass-produced at huge scale, compromises get made, and with Pukka, those compromises show up in both flavor and texture. The fillings are aggressively seasoned, but not in a way that tastes natural. Instead of enhancing the meat, the salt and pepper often overpower it, making every bite taste roughly the same regardless of whether you're eating steak, chicken, or mince. The meat itself is usually finely processed, giving the filling a uniform texture that feels closer to paste than stew. The pastry tends to be thick and bready rather than flaky, which adds heaviness without adding pleasure. Pukka pies are filling, but they rarely feel enjoyable past the first few bites. The fourth brand is Walls. Walls is better known for sausages and ice cream, but their pies still take up plenty of shelf space, and that alone creates expectations. Unfortunately, those expectations aren't met. Walls pies suffer from a lack of balance. The fillings are often bland, relying on gravy to carry flavor that should be coming from the meat itself. The meat quality is inconsistent, with fatty bits appearing more often than they should. Pastry, while not the worst on the market, lacks character. It's soft, slightly greasy, and doesn't have that crisp bite people associate with a proper pie. What makes Walls particularly disappointing is that nothing about the pie is outright terrible. It's just forgettable. And in a category built on comfort and tradition, forgettable is a failure. Fifth on the list is Tesco's own value meat pies, particularly the cheapest range. Supermarket own brand pies vary wildly depending on tier, and while premium lines can be decent, the budget versions are where problems pile up fast. These pies are built to hit a price point, and you can taste it. The meat content is minimal, often chopped so finely it loses all texture. Gravy is used as filler, thickened to the point where it feels gluey rather than rich. Seasoning is inconsistent, meaning one pie can taste flat while another is overwhelmingly salty. The pastry is usually pale and soft, offering little resistance and even less flavor. These pies technically do the job of being hot and filling, but they offer none of the pleasure that makes pies worth eating in the first place. Sixth is Asda's standard frozen meat pies. Frozen pies can be good when done properly, but these aren't. The biggest issue here is water content. Once cooked, the filling often releases excess moisture, which soaks into the pastry and turns the base mushy. The meat itself lacks depth of flavor, tasting more steamed than cooked, and the gravy often separates slightly, leaving a watery ring around the filling. The pastry, already compromised by freezing, struggles to recover in the oven and rarely crisps properly. What you're left with is a pie that looks acceptable on the outside, but collapses internally, which is one of the most disappointing experiences you can have with a pie. Seventh on the list is Morrisons Savors Pie. Morrisons has a strong reputation for fresh counters and in-store bakeries, which makes their lowest-tier pies especially frustrating. These pies feel completely disconnected from that reputation. The filling is sparse, with a high ratio of gravy to meat, and the meat itself often lacks clear identity. Beef tastes generic, chicken lacks juiciness, and seasoning feels rushed. The pastry is thick and doughy, designed more to hold shape than to taste good. These pies aren't offensive, but they feel like something made to meet a specification rather than to be enjoyed, and that shows in every bite. The eighth and final brand on this list is Aldi's cheapest chilled meat pies, not the premium specially selected range, but the base-level options. Aldi does many things well, but these pies are not one of them. The filling tends to be aggressively thickened, creating a texture that borders on starchy. Meat pieces are small and irregular, and the flavor often feels muted despite visible seasoning. The pastry is serviceable but lacks richness, likely due to cost-cutting on fat content. What makes these pies particularly disappointing is that Aldi is capable of much better, which only highlights how compromised these specific products are. All of these brands have in common is a reliance on shortcuts, too much gravy, not enough meat, pastry designed for stability rather than pleasure. Seasoning used to mask quality issues, instead of complementing good ingredients. When you stack those shortcuts together, you end up with a product that technically qualifies as a pie, but fails to deliver the experience people expect. A good meat pie should have contrast. Crisp pastry against soft filling, rich meat balanced by savory gravy, seasoning that enhances rather than overwhelms. The brands on this list miss that balance again and again. They prioritize cost, shelf life, and consistency over flavor and texture. And while that might make sense from a manufacturing perspective, it doesn't make for good eating. This doesn't mean all supermarket pies are bad, and it doesn't mean you should give up on pies altogether. It means being selective, paying attention to meat percentage, avoiding overly vague ingredient descriptions, and being wary of brands that trade too heavily on nostalgia without delivering quality. A pie should feel like a meal, not a compromise. If there's one takeaway here, it's this. When a pie relies on branding more than ingredients, you usually taste the difference. And once you've tasted a proper pie, the the shortcuts become impossible to ignore.